Good morning. Welcome to the home of the Calgary Unitarians. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on your journey of faith or search for meaning, welcome. If you are visiting for the first time or the first time in a long time, know that we are grateful to have you with us. We come together in beloved community to grow in wisdom, welcome and deepen relationships, and act for a just and sustainable world. My name is Carol Yankee. I use the pronouns she and her, and I currently serve on your board of trustees. Our service today centers on the story of the orange shirt, and is an example of what makes this congregation special. I recently participated in Wrestling with the Truth of Colonization, made possible through our relationship with the Calgary Alliance for the Common Good. Relationships within the congregation and with the community at large make this a very special place. If you are here in person today, please stay for coffee after the service. And if you're joining us online, please stay on for a virtual coffee hour afterwards. Now, wherever we are, let us remember and acknowledge the traditional territories and languages of all whose ancestors came before us. We recognize our responsibility to be stewards of this land and acknowledge that we do so in cooperation with the people of the Blackfoot Confederacy of Southern Alberta, comprised of the Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai First Nations, as well as the Dene First Nation band Tsuut'ina, and the Nakota First Nation, also known as Stoney. Alberta's Nakota First Nation is comprised of three bands, Bearspaw, Chiniki, and Wesley. Mokipsis, the Blackfoot word for what is now known as the city of Calgary, is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. In offering a land acknowledgement, we honor those who have long been her stewards and accept our shared responsibility for being good caretakers. We acknowledge that Treaty 7, signed September 22nd, 1877, was entered into as a collaboration between settlers and Indigenous peoples, making us all treaty people.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Hi, everybody on Zoom. I'm the Reverend Shelley Thompson. My pronouns are she and her, and I am the interim minister here at Calgary Unitarians, much to my delight. And I am so glad to be with you all this morning. It is Truth and Reconciliation Week that we honor in Calgary and all across Canada, and we know it's really every day that we want to focus on truth and reconciliation. So today is a good day to take the time out to think about what that means and why we're doing it, and to give us all some inspiration for the ongoing work that we do all throughout the year to participate as citizens of Canada in making a difference for the future. Now's a great time to say hello to your neighbors. We want to rise and embody your spirit, wave at everybody on Zoom, say good morning, and say hi to one another here in the hall. Welcome. And good morning to our visitors. If it's your first time here or your first time in a long time, we're so happy to see you. One of these days, I'm going to get the choir to sing the Good Morning song from Debbie Reynolds. I love that song from Singing in the Rain. You know that one, Christian? Good morning, good morning. You know that one? Morning to you. Thank you. Excellent, excellent. And of course, we'll have more time at coffee hour to chat and visit, and even maybe, dare we hug one another? Ooh, I hope so. I have a couple of announcements this morning. We have had to postpone our building meeting. We were going to get together next Sunday, October 2nd, after church. We've decided we need to have some more conversation. We've had lots and lots of conversation. The Moving Forward team is now talking to the board And there's just so many details and so much going on with this that we really want to get clarification on exactly how to help you all figure out what we've been trying to figure out so we can communicate best with you. So we need just a little bit more time to get that together and organized. And also, we're kind of hoping that more and more people will start coming back to the congregation. And we know right now we're still seeing smaller numbers, and we want to reach everybody with our communications about the new building. So it's just going to be a little delay until we can gather the synergy and the right timing on that. So do pay attention. We will make a big deal of it and re-announce it when we reschedule it. So we appreciate your patience with that. We know it's a topic of some anxiety, and we all just want to get that information. So hang in there with us, please. And a reminder that we are having a wonderful church retreat on November 19th. That's a Saturday. It's from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. out at the gorgeous Spirit Wood Retreat Center. And that is sponsored by our board. And we have the fabulous Leslie Robinson presenting for us. It's a time to renew and regenerate and soak up all that fabulous natural energy and actually get down to thinking about our vision and some goals for the year. Space is limited at that facility, and so we already have the board members and Leslie and myself. We have room for about 20 of you to join us, and we sure hope that we fill up that room. And so we're going to put e-news, we're going to put the registration out this week, and we're going to say there's early bird registration at $75 per person throughout the month of October. So you want to get in there and get this on your calendar, get yourself ready. And then if you're a latecomer and you register after that in November, it'll be $100. So we're offsetting the cost of this retreat by the generosity of our participants and our members. And if there's a financial hardship for you and you still want to come, all you have to do is just speak to me or a board member, and we will make sure that you can attend. So don't worry about that. But November 19th, check your calendars. We want to hear from you that you're going to be able to come. All right. Days like today, and on so many days, I turn to the wisdom of Richard Wagamese for beautiful words. He has this lovely book of meditation called Embers. If you don't have embers at home, it's a wonderful thing to have by your bed at night or to give as a gift. So we light our chalice with his words this morning. From our very first breath, we are in relationship. With that indrawn draft of air, we become joined to everything that was, is, and ever will be. When we exhale, we forge that relationship by virtue of the act of living. Our breath commingled with all breath, and we are a part of everything. That's the simple fact of things. We're born into a state of relationship, and our ceremonies and rituals are guides to lead us deeper into that relationship with all things. Big lesson: relationships never end. They just change. In believing that lies the freedom to carry compassion, empathy, love, kindness, and respect into and through whatever changes. We are made more by that practice. Amen. As we honor this National Week of Truth and Reconciliation, we know that it is a relationship with one another about which we speak. It's an everyday task. It's the way we're living as a community, as Canadians together, as a community of communities, in fact. And we are, as Unitarian Universalists, consciously widening our circles of care, concern, and compassion so that when we say that word we mean everyone. And as a people of faith, we know we want to be committed to traveling what's being called the Orange Path in honor of Orange Shirt Day. We listen to Indigenous voices. We learn our history and bear witness to the lasting impacts and current challenges. We share what we learn with others. We wear orange. We show solidarity. We post it on Facebook. We participate in events all throughout Calgary and other provinces and across the nation. We take action through Calgary Alliance for the Common Good and any and all advocacy and policy work that we can do here at the local and provincial level, and we're paying attention to the national level as well. We can choose to support Indigenous artists and businesses, and there are so many other things we can do every day to continue to travel the Orange Path in a good way. Please rise in body or spirit and join us in singing "We Are Circling" by Buffy St. Marie.
We are circling, circling together. We are singing, singing our heart song. This is family, this is unity, this is celebration, this is sacred. We are spiraling, spiraling together. Onward in migration to creation. Holy mystery, Mother Earth, childbirth. This is Mother Nature. This is sacred. We are circling, circling together. We are singing, singing our hearts out. This is family. This is unity. This is celebration. This is sacred. We are singing, singing all together. We are singing over the rainbow. This is harmony. This is community. This is celebration. This is sacred. We are circling, circling together. We are singing, singing our hearts out. This is family. This is unity. This is celebration. This is sacred. We are running together. Babies, elders, apostles, and angels. This is how we grow. This is how we get to know. This is celebration. This is sacred. We are circling, circling together. We are singing, singing our hearts out. This is family. This is unity. This is celebration. This is sacred. Nicely done. Sport time.
All right. Wonderful job, choir, as usual. I love the drum in particular. Thank you, Chantal. Charlene, yes, amazing. All right. So I'm Sheila McMaster, Director of Religious Education here at the Calgary Unitarians, and my pronouns are she and her. I'm so happy to see all your faces this morning. Yay! And all the wonderful spots of orange out here in the audience for our Orange Shirt Day. As you know, September 30th has been declared Orange Shirt Day nationally in recognition of the harm that residential school system did to children's self-esteem and well-being, and as an affirmation of commitment to ensure that everyone around us matters. And so you'll often see on the orange shirt, "Every child matters." And today I'm going to be sharing the true story of Phyllis Webstad. She wrote this story. It's called The Orange Shirt Story. And she's Canadian. She was born in Dog Creek and currently lives in Williams Lake, BC. And it's a slow story. It's a slow story of memories. And so settle in. It's like 10 minutes. It's, it's a long story. It's very much as if you were sitting with your grandmother and they were telling you what they remembered something in their past was like. And so it has that level of detail that I thought was important to share with all of you, because I think we hear the facts sometimes, but we don't often get to really feel that experience. And so it's a story for all ages, but it is one that takes you back to when she was 6 years old. And it's called The Orange Shirt Story by Phyllis Webstad. When Phyllis was a little girl, she lived with her granny on the Dog Creek Reserve, part of Canoe Creek First Nation. Their home had no electricity and no indoor toilet. And in the summer, when the sun was hot, Phyllis would cool herself off in a bathtub full of water that Granny kept in her garden. Phyllis and Granny lived off the food that they grew in Granny's garden and berries from the land. And Granny and Phyllis would go to the Fraser River and catch fish. And they would eat some fish for dinner and dry the rest on the drying rack to save for winter. And they didn't have much, but they got by with what they had. And growing up, Phyllis felt lonely. There weren't many children on the reserve to play with, and each September, all the older children, like her cousin, would leave the reserve and go to school, and Phyllis looked forward to the day when she could go too. Phyllis didn't get many hugs when she was little, but she did have Granny, and Granny's house was a safe place for everyone on the reserve. And there was lots of people who came to Granny for help and advice. And Phyllis's favorite place to be was in Granny's kitchen. And when Phyllis turned 6 in July, Granny made her a cake to celebrate her birthday. And Granny told Phyllis, now that she was 6, she was old enough to go to school. And when September came, she would go to the residential school, St. Joseph's Mission, for the first time. Phyllis was excited about going to school so she could play with her cousin and all the other children. And she wanted to find out what happened there and hoped she would make some friends. And before her first day at school, Granny took Phyllis into town to buy a new shirt. And they didn't have a car or a truck, so when they went into town, they'd take a blue bus that they called the stage. And going into town was exciting. They took the stage down a noisy and bumpy dirt road, and soon the bumps stopped and the noise hushed. And Phyllis looked out the window and saw a paved road whizzing by underneath them. And the town was so loud and busy, and the people and the vehicles were everywhere. And there were shops to visit and restaurants to eat in, and one shop had a red and white pole outside of it. And Phyllis watched it twirl round and round, and she wondered where the stripes were going to. And Granny took Phyllis to a restaurant, and they sat at a booth with a mini jukebox. And when Phyllis dropped a coin into the slot, the box would play a song for her. And Phyllis ordered breakfast with 2 eggs, and when they came, they were sunny side up. It was like they were looking up at her from her plate. And Phyllis didn't know how to eat them. Granny's eggs were always scrambled. And after breakfast, Granny took Phyllis to a shop that was filled with clothes and toys, and Phyllis picked out a shiny orange shirt that laced down the front. It was bright and exciting, and she felt excited about the shirt as she did to go to school. And Granny bought the shirt, and they got back to the stage and went home. And Phyllis held the bag with her orange shirt in it all the way home, and she promised herself she wouldn't wear it until the big day when she went to school. Phyllis waited, and finally the day arrived, and Phyllis, wearing her shiny orange shirt for the first time, said goodbye to Granny, and Granny patted her on the head and said, "What loves it?" And Phyllis got on the stage with all the children and waved at Granny from the window. It was a 2-hour journey to get to the residential school, so much further than Phyllis had ever traveled before, and she stared out the window, waiting to see the place that they were going. When they arrived, Phyllis started to feel very scared. The residential school was so much taller than anything she'd ever seen before, and the building seemed cold and unfriendly as the nuns who came out of the school to meet them. Phyllis asked her cousin how long they had to stay there, and her cousin said it would be 300 sleeps before they could go home. 300 sleeps? That sounded like forever. And the nuns took all the children inside and walked them down a long hallway in single file. And in a room, the children were undressed and made to take a shower. And Phyllis had never seen water coming out of the walls before. Phyllis didn't want to take off her shiny orange shirt, but they made her. And after she showered, they gave her different clothes to wear, and she didn't like them. The nuns put Phyllis in a chair and cut her hair short. And she asked for her orange shirt back, but they told her she wouldn't be allowed to wear it anymore. And Phyllis cried, "Give it back. It's not yours, it's mine. My granny bought it for me." But no one would listen. The residential school wasn't where Phyllis learned. It was the place where the children slept and ate. Phyllis soon realized that the nuns didn't care if she was tired or sick or hungry or sad. She had to rely on herself. It felt as though she didn't matter. And at dinner time, Phyllis and the other children would eat tasteless, almost colorless food. There was pale green moon-shaped beans that tasted awful. And there was smelly fish that definitely wasn't like the salmon she and Granny had used to eat together. And at night, Phyllis wondered why Granny was not coming to get her here. She would cry herself to sleep, and in her dreams she would play in Granny's garden and go salmon fishing in the river. Each day the children went to town to attend public school. Before boarding the bus, they picked up small cartons of orange juice and brown paper bags with their lunches inside. Everyone would look to see if they had one too, but their lunch bags just had sandwiches in them. It felt like the grown-ups were playing a cruel joke on them. And Phyllis took the bus to public school with her cousin. And every day the bus driver dropped her cousin off at a different school. And Phyllis wished she could go with her. And she didn't understand why they couldn't be together. At school, Phyllis learned to read and write with all the other boys and girls, but she was still lonely. And all the children from the residential school were lonely because they had been taken away from their homes and families. Her teacher was a curly-haired redhead, and she was as nice as she smelled. She would smile at Phyllis and help her with her lessons, and Phyllis wished she'd go home with her teacher at the end of the day. She made being at school bearable. Phyllis liked her teacher, but she was no substitute for Granny. She wondered what Granny was doing while Phyllis went to school every day. Phyllis missed her home and the garden. She started counting the days till she could go back again, and each day the number got smaller and smaller, and she waited and she waited. And the other children at school could order books from a book club, but none of the residential school children were allowed to get any. Phyllis didn't understand why they were treated differently. She wanted a book too. Why wasn't she allowed one? In the playground, she was just like all the other boys and girls. At lunchtime, everyone played together. And Phyllis learned to swing on the swing and would wrap her swing around the pole and watch it unwind. And the best time of day was when the bus came to pick them up after school. And Phyllis always saved a seat for her cousin. And when it came to her stop, her cousin would run onto the bus and plop down next to Phyllis. And sometimes she would bring onions that she'd picked on the school grounds. And her cousin would say, "Want some?" And Phyllis would laugh at her onion breath. But Phyllis was always so hungry. She would grab an onion and eat it like an apple, and her breath smelled just as bad as her cousin's did. And on the bus, they learned to sing songs together. They sang, "We are the missions, the mighty, mighty missions. Everywhere we go, people want to know who we are, so we tell them, we are the missions." And the seasons changed from fall to winter, and then to spring, and finally it was summer again. And Phyllis was excited about going home, and she never wanted to go back to residential school or see the cold-hearted nuns ever again. And after 300 sleeps, the stage came and took Phyllis back home to the reserve. And she was so happy to be back to a place that mattered, where she mattered, a place where people cared about her. And that summer, she stayed at home with her granny, and she stayed in her familiar house and worked with Granny in the garden. And she went fishing for salmon in the Fraser River, and she ate them for dinner. And she had everything she needed, and she never went back to the residential school again. Not every child was as lucky as Phyllis. The end. And Phyllis says, I am honored to be able to tell my story so that others may benefit and understand, and maybe other survivors will feel comfortable enough to share their stories too. And now we're taking the kids and youth downstairs to do our own work. We are working on our own orange shirt project, where we're going to be answering different questions like, when we're in school, how should a child feel? How should we be treated? How should we treat others? And there goes my orange shirt. And so now, please join me as we sing The Children Downstairs.
And now we're going to have a little bit more of information from Phyllis telling us some more about her story and why Orange Shirt Day is so important. Phyllis Webster.
In July of 1973, I turned 6. My grandmother brought me to town to Williams Lake to buy something new to wear. What I chose was a shiny orange shirt for my first day of school at the mission. We are here on the grounds of the mission, the former site of the St. Joseph Indian Residential School, where 3 generations of my family attended. When I got to the mission, my new shirt was taken away, and no matter how much I cried or wanted it back or protested, it didn't matter. I never did get my shirt back, and I don't have a memory of ever wearing it again.
Orange Shirt Day began with Phyllis's story in Williams Lake and has now spread across BC and Canada. The orange shirt represents the emotional, the mental, and the physical trauma that Indigenous communities endured during the residential school era and continues to endure even today. Following the confirmation of more than 1,300 unmarked graves near the former residential school sites across Western Canada, including more than 200 here in Kamloops, this story is more important than ever.
Every child matters. When I was in residential school, I felt that I didn't matter and that no one cared. We could be tired, sick, hungry, and lonely. There wasn't anyone there to tell us that it would be okay.
For all the children who survived residential schools across Canada, you matter.
For all the ones who didn't make it home, you matter. And for all the children today dealing with generations of trauma caused by residential schools, you matter.
September 30th is Orange Shirt Day, National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. Wearing orange shows Canada is taking a unified step towards reconciliation. It honors our truth and hopefully continues to build a stronger relationship between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples.
Wearing orange means standing alongside us. It means honoring our truth. It means walking with us toward a brighter future. Together we can remember and honor our past while we work together and build a better Canada.
Our next testimony that I ask you to bear witness to is from Chief Dr. Robert Joseph. He says, "Let us find a way to belong to this time and place together. Our future and the well-being of all our children rests with the kind of relationships we build today." Chief Dr. Robert Joseph is the hereditary chief of the Wakanuk First Nation, who upholds a life dedicated to bridging the differences brought about by intolerance, lack of understanding, and racism at home and abroad. Here is his story in his words.
I was 6 years old when they took me to a residential school. I remember the day walking toward that school with my mother, and it was a silent walk, and I was so afraid. 20 or 30 little kids herded into the showers, and then your body being painted in white liquid of some kind, your hair cropped and then doused in kerosene. And that was pretty traumatizing. The school held roughly 220 people, half boys, half girls, and we were segregated. If I was caught waving at my sister, there'd be a punishment for it. And so as a result of that segregation, I never really learned any social skills that young people should be learning as they grow up. From a religious and spiritual perspective, of course, the churches lobbied hard to convert Indigenous people, Aboriginal people. They said that we were heathen and pagan. They targeted language in those things we had learned through all of millennia to know where we came from, to know who we were, as something that had to be eliminated. Before that time, I lived in a place called Guayastums. They call it Guilford Island now. We harvested from the forest all of the animals that we needed to provide us sustenance, and from the ocean in front of us as well, all of the species of whales and mink and fish. And I had a connection to the environment around us. And so after having spent years in those schools, by the time we were ready to leave, most of us were pretty broken. Many of us, including myself, descended into addictions, alcoholism, and violence, and it was pretty difficult. Those schools lasted for over 100 years. There were over 150,000 little children. And the last school that closed in Canada was in 1996 in Saskatchewan. There was a history on this land that had been absolutely ignored. Nobody knew about the residential school legacy. Nobody knew about the intent of the Indian Act, the chronic challenges now facing Aboriginals. And we're starting to accept the idea that we have this shared history for which we all are responsible for. When the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report was submitted, I was in the room when Justice Murray Sinclair, the chair of the commission, denounced Canada. He had just recited a litany of intensive harms against Aboriginal people. And when he said, "Canada, you have committed cultural genocide," there was just a silence in that room, and then all of a sudden it erupted in euphoria. We said survivors want an apology from the Prime Minister in the House of Commons. And I was there and I heard the words, "I'm sorry," and then I couldn't see because my eyes were just flowing with tears. I was so happy that somebody had said, "I'm sorry." Canada, by the way, is the only Western country that has had a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So we're trying to look through a new lens. We and Canadians, we as an Aboriginal, we celebrate each other, everybody cheering each other up as we move toward a more equal, prosperous future for all of us. My name is Chief Robert Joseph, and I believe that Truth and Reconciliation is Canada.
We are all one. As a beloved community of care and concern, we hold each other, our community, our province, our country, and the world in our hearts, because we know that all people suffer, all people have pain, all people have joys and celebrations. We have relationship with one another by virtue of our shared humanity, and every single child matters. We are all important. We all have worth and dignity. Well, as we light our candles today, we widen our circle and know that it is for the joys and celebrations of Calgary Unitarians, of Calgary, of Alberta, of Canada, the whole world. And so with the sorrows, our hearts and minds have no boundaries to draw. The circle is wide. The circle is for everyone having pain or sorrow or grief in this world. And our central candle today for Truth and Reconciliation, we light that with the knowledge that we need to carry that flame with us every day. And on that spirit, today we also honor our Jewish siblings who are celebrating Rosh Hashanah. And Marcia has a reading for us.
The high holiday season is a time of reflection and introspection. We immerse ourselves, body and soul, into the work of assessing who we were in the past year and deepening our commitment to who we want to be in the years to come. When this period of reflection ends with the wail of the shofar, the ram's horn trumpet, on Yom Kippur, we re-enter the world, dedicated to fulfill our vows for change.
Is the microphone on? Can you hear?
Ah, good,
Can't hear it
okay.
back here, so just checking.
All right,
Sorry, Marcia.
okay. Now is the time to turn our lofty commitments into tangible actions to impact our renewed world. Now is the time to move from reflecting about justice to pursuing it. Now is the time to build the world that we imagined in our meditation and our prayer. We reflect on our generosity and greed of the past year. Then comes the time to share our resources to support the vulnerable. We reflect on the ways in which we have used and abused power during the past year. Then comes the time to harness our political power to advocate for those without a voice. We reflect on how our actions have affected others over the past year. Now is the time to act intentionally and decisively, to stand up as leaders for change, and to motivate others to join the struggle for human rights. Together, let the momentum of this time of change lead us individually and collectively to the true teshuvah, tefillah, and tzedakah, introspection, prayer, and pursuit of justice. May we be blessed to fully engage in the process of reflection and then transition into action, so that this new year may bring about the transformations that we seek in the world.
Thank you, Marcia. Please feel free to come forward and light a candle or place a stone in our communal bowl of water while our choir will present for us, "We Are All One People."
Saskatchewan Cree composers Joseph Natoho and Cheryl Lee Rondell, and it's a celebration of the fact that we're all one people here. So here are our notes. Thank you to Shelley for the drumming. It's wonderful.
My battery's dead or my chalice runs out of oil, I think of Howard Thurman, who said, "Keep fresh before me my moments of high resolve." Okay, chalice, take two. And Albert Schweitzer says, sometimes our own flame goes out and we need the spark from someone else to help us light it again. I know, right? Okay. Okay, come on. Woo, there. I'm making friends with this chalice. Normally I spill the oil. I didn't do that. Ha! Celebrate the minor victories. We're going to hear a final testimony today and a call to action from Bernadette Dean, residential school survivor. She's a feature in the Legacy of Hope Foundation's program that's called Escaping Residential Schools. And that program, we'll talk a little bit more about it, but they've done a wonderful job of digitizing their incredible exhibits and programs through the Legacy of Hope. And so these videos are available for everyone to see. And I was especially moved by her vulnerability, her honesty, her willingness to share her truth with us, and her commitment to us all being one people called to action together. This is Bernadette in her words.
My name is Bernadette Dean, and you spell it Bernadette, Dean, Dean. I'm Inuk. I'm originally from Coral Harbor. I've been living in Rankin Inlet, Nunavut, but going to art school in Ottawa. It's my story and many others' story. I think it's important that the stories of residential school survivors are heard, and heard by many people and many Canadians, because there's so many untold stories that were quiet for so long. This is my story, and first of all, my parents didn't understand English at all. They lived in the land for, I'm number 10 of 11 children they had, and most of their children were born out on the land. I was the second child of my mom born in a white man's hospital. And when she had given birth to, my older siblings out on the land in our own way, she told me that when she was in labor with me at the hospital, she knew, like, she was more accustomed to being on her knees during childbirth. They would push her on the bed when she was in labor with me. I think that was trauma I experienced even at childbirth. Even before I was born, I could feel like I'm a believer. We experience everything our mothers experienced. So, and then my mom told me I was a big baby, fat baby, but I got medevac without my parents, without my mom, without my dad. That's the way it was. And she said I was so fat, it was like I had strings tied on my joints. And then she said when I came back from the hospital, I have a record of it, by the way. I was returned home March 1964. I would have been maybe 9 months old when I returned. She said I came home skinny, and so I was already broken and traumatized by the system, the government system or white man system. And growing up number 10 of 11 children, I had 3 older sisters that when the time came, they would leave home. They all left. We had a chance to be the eldest in our home. I thought it was normal that when you reach a certain age or complete a certain grade, you go away. I I thought that was normal. Our parents were intimidated by white people in the government. They had no voice. It was not normal. I don't know what my story is, but it was so wrong and it was not normal. And it left so many broken. I was numb for many years. I was numb for many years. I didn't know I was numb, but it was a way to survive the trauma or try and forget it. And even to this day, there's so many. We got out of residential school and we had no sense of belonging. No sense. I didn't know that we were rejected by our own community sometimes. And a lot of residential school survivors have that no sense of belonging in them. And it's a terrible thing when you feel like you don't belong anywhere. And I belong in Canada, and I believe in the 94 calls to action. Like, I'll be fighting for those 94 calls to action till the day I die. I'm just grateful the stories are being told, and because there's so many levels of trauma and how it impacts us emotionally, mentally, spiritually, that only when you tell your story, you bring it to light. And I'm grateful stories are being told. We all have to play our part in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's 94 calls to action. We all have that responsibility as Canadians to implement those and to the 94 calls to action. Because we belong to Canada and we're all Canadians, and we owe it to the future generations to make a difference. And those 94 calls to action can create positive change and difference for the future generations.
Phyllis and Bernadette and Robert, we hear you. You matter. Again, the words of Richard Wagamese. For you today, my friends, I raise sacred smoke. For you who are troubled, confused, doubtful, lonely, afraid, addicted, unwell, bothered or alone, I raise sacred smoke. For those of you in sorrow, grief, or pain, I raise sacred smoke. For those who work for people, for change, for spiritual evolution, for the upward and outward growth of our common humanity and the well-being of our planet, I raise sacred smoke. For those of you in joy, the glow of small or great triumphs, who live in love, faith, courage, and respect, I raise sacred smoke. And in the act of all of this, I raise it also for myself. I will be sharing some resources with you. I've prepared some handouts that we'll have in the lobby, and I will make them available online to all of us. There are so many resources for us to learn, to listen, to share, and to act. The Orange Shirt Day website, which tells us about the orange path of learning, sharing, showing, and acting. The Legacy of Hope, that has witness testimonies on it. And the Government of Canada National Day of Truth and Reconciliation website. They're going to be illuminating Parliament Hill on September 30th, starting at 7 p.m. through sunrise at October 1st. It's going to be orange, so if you get the chance to see that, take a look. And on the 30th, there'll be a 1-hour national commemorative gathering live from Ottawa. We have to check our listings for the time. The National Truth and Reconciliation website has additional resources. You can get yourself a PDF printout of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada, the calls to action, these 94 calls to action about which Bernadette was speaking. 94 sounds like a lot, but I'm sure that's just the beginning. There's probably 9,400. So there are categories amongst the calls to action: justice, language, culture, health, and so on. So I encourage all of us, I know it seems daunting, but read through these and see what areas of civic change, where's your heart pulled? Is it child welfare system? Is it the education system? Is it mental health? Is it around apologies and accountability? There are so many choices in here for where your heart might be called, and to find out where your spheres of influence are. Who do you know? What is your decision-making power? How can you influence others to bring about change on all of these calls to action? So we certainly none of us could do all of them simultaneously, but we can all find the areas that call to us and where we are especially inspired to make a difference and contribute in those ways. And I also discovered a wonderful, one thing to come out of COVID is that a lot of things became virtually available. There's a beautiful exhibit called The Witness Blanket, and it's inspired by a woven blanket. It's a large-scale work of art that contains hundreds of items reclaimed from residential schools, churches, government buildings, and traditional and cultural structures across Canada. And there are video stories, there are testimonies, and there's all kinds of information for you to explore this incredible project that they've created. Really inspiring, really inspiring. And likewise, the Legacy of Hope has made all of their presentations virtual. And then the University of Calgary is having events. There'll be all kinds of events this coming week. So check your local listings, as we say. There's going to be a film screening at the University of Calgary on Friday night of a film that is called Night Raiders, that's a future dystopian version of the situation faced by folks in residential schools. It's about a mother trying to rescue her daughter from a state-run institution. So that's available in person or online. There's a webinar this Thursday I plan to attend by a Métis Cree elder named Carrie Moore, and she says we need to move from reconciliation to reconciliation. Reconciliation, and she has a change model that she's encouraging us to try as we all figure out how to be on this orange path together. So lots and lots of resources, lots of way to participate, always something for everybody, as we say. Find your way, find your orange path. That is the message of the orange path. Each and every one of us has a way forward. And if we each embark on that journey and encourage one another and our friends and family, it sure does make a difference. Everybody's contributions matter. Now is the time in our service when we honor and gratefully receive the financial support that sustains this congregation and our shared mission, all of the wonderful work that we do together. And it is through your generosity that we are able to be here today. We also give thanks for the ways in which people donate online, relatively invisibly, and then there's the capacity to do the old-fashioned passing the basket, which we're going to do today. So we thank you all for your ongoing support. We know these are crazy, weird times, and there's a lot of uncertainty, but your steadfast devotion to maintaining this source of community, this beacon of hope, this light in our lives and in the lives of Calgary, all across our province, in fact. We thank you for that generous support. Our For Others this month is the Urban Society for Aboriginal Youth that you've been hearing about this month. They work with Indigenous groups and with youth directly to design programming that nurture self-empowerment and foster healthy collaboration and communication among Indigenous youth. And they're running over 30 programs right now, very worthy of our support. So as we collect our offering, if we could have a volunteer, Jeff, thankfully, is volunteering to usher. Please come forward. And we're going to sing Building Bridges.
While the choir is getting into position here, I just want to explain the round that we're going to do here. And hopefully you can sing while this plate is going around here. But we're going to have group 1 be on this side of the congregation here, group 2 right here, group 3 there, and group 4 right on the edge. We're going to sing it all together first, and then we'll go into the round. And I'd like to do the round twice for every part. And when you get to the end, and if the other groups are not done yet, just go ahead and keep singing the last line until we all end together. Here we go. Good luck. Meet you at the end.
Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony.
I'm going to give you the lyrics. Sorry about that. Nope. They did. Thank you. That was beautiful, everybody. And thank you, choir, for being the voices when the rest of us don't know the words. We're going to extinguish our chalice, but certainly not the flame of truth and the fire of commitment in our hearts that fuels reconciliation and inspires us to create a world where all people belong. Please rise in body or spirit and join me in singing, Answering the Call of Love.